A big moment this weekend at Lakewood Church as a new generation begins to take center stage. Jonathan Osteen spoke at Saturday and Sunday services. He is the son of Joel and Victoria Osteen.
Jonathan Osteen's unexpected message inside Lakewood Church quickly caught everyone off guard. What was meant to be a familiar atmosphere of inspiration suddenly turned into a moment of tension and uncertainty. Instead of the usual focus on success and positivity, he introduced a very different direction that no one saw coming. His words raised serious questions about the church's future, its message, and whether a major shift is about to unfold behind the scenes. A message no one saw coming inside Lakewood. Something about the atmosphere inside Lakewood Church felt different the moment Jonathan Osteen stepped up to speak. At first, it looked like another familiar moment, one of those uplifting appearances people had grown used to. Jonathan had always been known for bringing energy, warmth, and positivity whenever he was on stage. That was the expectation, that was the pattern. But this time, the feeling was not the same. There was a quiet tension in the air that no one could immediately explain. The usual comfort of routine seemed to fade, replaced by something more serious, something more deliberate. Even before he said much, people could sense that this message was going to take a different direction. And then it started. Jonathan's tone was calmer than usual, but also heavier, more focused. Less about inspiration in the moment, and more about reflection on the bigger picture. It quickly became clear that he wasn't just delivering encouragement, he was raising questions about direction, purpose, and responsibility. What made the moment stand out was not just what he was saying, but how he was saying it. Instead of the usual emphasis on personal breakthrough and success, Jonathan began pointing toward deeper concerns that many people face, but rarely hear addressed in a church setting. He spoke about emotional struggles, mental pressure, and the growing challenges younger generations are dealing with in silence. It was unexpected, because this was not the usual focus associated with the ministry built by Joel Osteen, whose teachings had long centered on hope, positivity, and personal faith-driven success. That foundation had shaped the identity of the church for years. But Jonathan wasn't rejecting it. He was stretching it. He acknowledged the legacy his father had built with respect, recognizing the global impact it had made. Many people had found encouragement, strength, and direction through those teachings. That part was never in question. However, what followed suggested that the world outside the church had changed, and the message might need to grow with it. Jonathan began hinting that people today are facing problems that go beyond inspiration alone. Issues like mental health, social pressure, and disconnection among younger generations were becoming harder to ignore. He suggested that these realities should not be left outside the conversation. As he spoke, the room started reacting differently. Some listened with curiosity, trying to understand where this was heading. Others stayed quiet, as if unsure whether they were hearing a new direction forming in real time. A few seemed visibly surprised, not by disagreement, but by the unexpected depth of the message. Because this wasn't just reflection anymore, it felt like a shift was being introduced. Jonathan's words carried a subtle challenge, not against the past, but toward the future. A suggestion that staying relevant might require stepping into conversations the church had not fully embraced before. And as he continued, it became clear that this was not the end of his message. It was only the beginning. Because what he was about to say next would push the atmosphere inside Lakewood Church into something far more intense and far more unexpected than anyone in that room was prepared for. When Jonathan Osteen took a risky turn inside Lakewood Church, the shift didn't merely continue, it deepened the moment Jonathan Osteen spoke again. What was once a calm and reflective atmosphere quickly turned into something heavier, more charged, and harder to ignore. The energy in the room changed so noticeably that even those who were only casually listening suddenly became fully alert. Something important was unfolding. Jonathan's voice no longer carried hesitation. It carried certainty, not loud, not aggressive, but steady in a way that made every word feel intentional. And with that tone, the message began to take shape in a far more direct direction. Each moment pointed toward a clearer intent that slowly reshaped how the audience understood what was being revealed in real time. He started addressing the purpose of the church in a way that felt broader than usual. Instead of staying within familiar themes of encouragement and personal success, he began pointing toward real-world struggles that people carry beyond Sunday services. Mental health, emotional pressure, the silent battles people face every day, and the growing disconnect many younger individuals feel toward traditional institutions. The room reacted subtly, but noticeably. Some people leaned forward slightly, trying to catch every detail. Others stayed still, processing what they were hearing. It was not confusion, it was recognition that this message was different from what they expected. Jonathan didn't dismiss the foundation laid by Joel Osteen. In fact, he acknowledged it directly and respectfully. He spoke about how that message of hope and positivity had reached millions and created a global impact. But then came the shift in emphasis. He suggested that while that foundation remains strong, the world around it has changed significantly. And that change, he implied, cannot be ignored. That single idea altered the tone of everything he was saying, because it wasn't just about updating style or language. It was about whether the message still fully connects with what people are experiencing today. Jonathan continued by focusing on how modern struggles are often invisible. People may appear fine on the outside, but carry stress, confusion, or emotional weight internally. He pointed out that younger generations, in particular, are navigating pressures that previous eras didn't experience in the same way. Social expectations, identity struggles, constant comparison, mental fatigue. These were not abstract ideas in his message, they were realities. As he spoke, the atmosphere inside the church grew more focused. The usual emotional rhythm of a service, uplifting, predictable, familiar, was replaced with something more reflective and uncertain, not negative, just different. Jonathan then made a key point that quietly shifted the meaning of everything he had said so far. He suggested that the church should not only inspire people spiritually, but also acknowledge the real-life struggles they bring with them, not as a replacement for faith, but as part of it. That distinction mattered, because it reframed his message as an expansion rather than a rejection. Still, even with careful wording, the implications were impossible to ignore. Anytime a long-standing tradition is questioned, even gently, it creates tension, and that tension began to form quietly in the room. Some listeners began wondering if this was simply Jonathan's personal perspective, or something that reflected a deeper change in thinking within Lakewood Church itself. Others started thinking ahead, questioning whether this could signal a broader shift in direction. Jonathan's tone softened slightly as he continued, but his message remained firm. He encouraged openness to conversations that many churches hesitate to fully engage in. He emphasized that ignoring these topics might create distance between the church and the people it aims to reach. And that idea lingered because it suggested change, not immediate disruption, but a possible evolution. Then, just when it seemed like the message had reached its peak, Jonathan subtly hinted that he was not finished, that what he had shared so far was only part of a much bigger perspective he wanted to express. The room tightened again, because everyone could feel it now. This was building towards something else entirely, something that would not stay within the walls of Lakewood Church for long, and would soon spark reactions far beyond what anyone in that moment could predict. And, with that rising tension, the conversation moved toward what would become a wave of public reaction, spreading everywhere. The internet reacts to Jonathan Osteen's message. The moment Jonathan Osteen finished speaking inside Lakewood Church, the conversation didn't stay contained for long. Within hours, clips, comments, and interpretations began spreading rapidly beyond the church audience. What felt like a single moment of reflection inside the room quickly turned into a public discussion that grew louder and more divided as it spread. And just like that, opinions split. For many viewers, Jonathan's message felt refreshing and necessary. They saw it as a bold step toward addressing issues that are often left out of traditional church conversations. Mental health, emotional struggles, and generational pressure were finally being acknowledged in a space where they had often been overlooked. Younger audiences, in particular, resonated with this shift. For them, it felt like the church was beginning to speak in a language that matched their reality, not just offering inspiration, but also recognition of what people actually go through in daily life. To supporters, Jonathan wasn't breaking tradition, he was updating it. They viewed him as someone willing to evolve the message of faith so it stays relevant in a changing world. In their eyes, this wasn't controversy, it was progress. But not everyone agreed. Critics felt differently, arguing that the strength of Joel Osteen's leadership had always come from a consistent focus on hope, positivity, and personal faith. That message had defined Lakewood Church for years, and helped it grow into a globally recognized ministry. For them, introducing broader social issues felt unnecessary or even risky. They questioned whether expanding the message might weaken the church's original identity rather than strengthen it. In their view, faith-based spaces should remain centered on spiritual encouragement rather than becoming platforms for wider societal discussions. This difference in perspective quickly turned into debate. Online discussions intensified, with people interpreting Jonathan's message in completely opposite ways. Some called it a necessary evolution. Others called it a dangerous shift. The same words were being understood in entirely different directions depending on who was listening. Then came the media reaction. Headlines began to circulate, each one shaping the story differently. Some focused on change and modernization, while others leaned into conflict and tension. As coverage spread, speculation grew louder about whether this signaled disagreement within the Osteen family or a shift in church leadership direction. But beneath all the noise, one thing remained clear. Jonathan's message had struck a nerve because it touched on something larger than a single sermon. And as public reactions continued to grow, attention began shifting away from interpretation and towards something even more sensitive: the response from the Osteen family itself. Because what they would say next could either calm the growing speculation or push the entire conversation into an even deeper direction. How Joel Osteen reacted to the moment. As discussions intensified outside, attention quickly turned back to the people at the center of it all: Jonathan Osteen and his family within Lakewood Church. Many expected tension, disagreement, or even signs of conflict, but what followed was far more composed than the public speculation suggested. Joel Osteen responded with calmness and restraint. Rather than treating Jonathan's message as a challenge, he approached it as part of a larger conversation about growth and direction. His tone emphasized unity, not division. Joel acknowledged the importance of evolving with time while still holding on to the church's core foundation. In his view, Jonathan's perspective was not a rejection of tradition, but a reflection of a younger generation trying to connect faith with modern realities. That interpretation shifted the narrative slightly. Instead of conflict, the public began to see a picture of understanding within the family. Joel's response suggested openness to discussion rather than resistance to change. It also reinforced the idea that leadership at Lakewood was not in opposition, but in transition and growth. Behind public appearances, the Osteen family continued presenting a united front. There were no visible signs of internal disagreement, no public disputes, and no indication of separation in vision. Instead, their communication reflected stability, even as outside conversations became more intense. Still, the questions didn't disappear. If anything, they grew more layered. Was Jonathan simply expressing personal ideas about the future of the church? Or was this the beginning of a broader shift in direction that would gradually shape Lakewood's identity over time? Joel's response suggested encouragement rather than concern, but interpretation remained divided depending on perspective. What became clear, however, was that the family dynamic was not breaking under pressure. Instead, it was being observed more closely than ever before. And as the public continued analyzing every detail, attention slowly shifted towards something else: Jonathan's evolving role within the church itself. Because whether intentional or not, his voice was beginning to carry more weight in conversations about the future. And that raised a new question no one could ignore anymore. What exactly is Jonathan Osteen's long-term vision for Lakewood Church? That question would soon take center stage as the discussion moved toward leadership, responsibility, and the cost of growing influence. The weight of the Osteen name. For Jonathan Osteen, life inside Lakewood Church has never been just about visibility. It has always come with pressure. Being the son of Joel Osteen means growing up under constant public attention. Every word, every appearance, and every shift in tone is closely watched and interpreted. There is little room for privacy when your family name is tied to one of the most recognized ministries in the world. And now, as Jonathan's influence becomes more noticeable, that pressure feels even heavier. Expectations are no longer quiet. They are constant. People want to know what direction he will take, what values he will emphasize, and how closely he will align with or expand beyond the foundation his father built. It creates a delicate balance between honoring legacy and developing individuality. That balance is not easy to maintain. Jonathan is not only carrying a family name, but also the weight of a message that has shaped millions of lives. The challenge lies in respecting that legacy while still finding space to express a voice that reflects a changing generation. Because the world he is speaking to today is not the same world that shaped the early identity of Lakewood. Younger audiences are asking different questions now. They are more open about mental health struggles, more aware of social issues, and more interested in conversations that go beyond traditional inspiration. Jonathan's perspective appears to reflect that shift in awareness, but with that comes expectation from the other side as well. Longtime followers of the church often prefer consistency. They value stability in messaging and clarity in spiritual direction. For them, any change in tone can feel significant, even if it is not intended as a departure from tradition. This is where the tension quietly builds, not as conflict, but as pressure from multiple directions. Jonathan's growing role suggests a transition period where leadership identity is still forming. He is not replacing the past, but he is also not repeating it exactly as it was. Instead, he is positioned somewhere in between, where interpretation, expectation, and responsibility all meet. And that space is not easy to navigate, because every step forward is carefully analyzed, and every idea is weighed against legacy. Still, his direction suggests that change is not being avoided. It is being considered carefully, piece by piece. And as this pressure continues to grow, a deeper question begins to emerge. Is this simply a moment of personal development for Jonathan Osteen, or the beginning of a larger transformation inside Lakewood Church itself? That question leads directly into something even more forward-looking: his vision for what comes next, and how he intends to shape it. This sets the stage for a closer look at how his ideas may influence the church's future direction, and whether those early signals point toward gradual change or something more significant unfolding ahead. The future direction of Lakewood Church. After the intense discussions and growing speculation, Jonathan Osteen eventually offered a clearer sense of direction regarding his perspective inside Lakewood Church. Rather than distancing himself from tradition, he emphasized continuity. He made it clear that his intention was never to replace the foundation established by Joel Osteen, but to build on it in a way that reflects today's realities. His message focused on balance. On one side, he reaffirmed the importance of hope, faith, and positivity, core values that have defined Lakewood for decades. On the other, he highlighted the need to acknowledge modern struggles such as mental health, emotional pressure, and the challenges faced by younger generations. For Jonathan, these were not opposing ideas. They were connected. He suggested that faith should not only uplift people spiritually, but also meet them where they are in real life. In his view, a meaningful message is one that acknowledges both belief and struggle, encouragement and reality. This approach reflects a broader vision of inclusivity, one where different generations can feel seen and understood within the same spiritual space. Older members who value tradition and younger audiences seeking deeper relevance are not positioned against each other, but brought into the same conversation. Jonathan's perspective painted a future where Lakewood Church continues to evolve without losing its identity. A place where messages of faith remain strong, but are also supported by awareness of real-world challenges. It is not a rejection of the past, but a reimagining of how it can live forward. As his vision became clearer, so did the significance of his earlier message. What once sounded like a bold shift now appeared more like a gradual transition, carefully shaped rather than abruptly changed. And while opinions around him remain divided, one thing is undeniable: Jonathan Osteen's voice is beginning to influence how the future is being discussed. Because, whether embraced or questioned, his perspective has already sparked a conversation that is no longer fading. It is evolving, and what happens next may define not only his role, but the next chapter of Lakewood Church itself. If Jonathan Osteen's message made you think about the future of Lakewood Church, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and check out the next video for more stories like this.